Back
been
then,
shaped.
did you pursue opportunity through the lens of money or passion?
I think I was trying to stay as close to the passion pursuit as possible, but also could I find the passion where there's the biggest amount of money to be made? Well, but 6 months later, get a bang on my door at 6 in the morning, and then I look out the window and I'm like, the welcome party is here. At least 12 to 16 officers.
And these are the tough questions I think all of us go through in different areas. Why did you make the decision knowing that you had to wait for the license to not?
Opportunity and demand.
Yeah.
And the last piece of this was the money. I was originally sentenced to 2.5 years. In the feds, they go by months, so it was 30 months. Only after I go into my incarceration and realize how spiritually empty I really was, that bottom became my climb to the mountain. I met a gentleman. We had gotten to talking after I met him, and he said, listen, you don't understand what it's like to get letters and not numbers. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, come here. And he went to his locker and he pulled out his piece of paper and he said, look. And it said his name, and then it says release date, deceased. There's going to be a time where your season changes, where you're going to break through the prison, but you have to see it. You have to envision it. And if you don't, guess what? You're committing yourself to being deceased and never leaving the place that you're in.
Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate being here, man.
Yeah, this is exciting for me because this is the first time we've gone from having one spouse on earlier, and now we get the other side, the other perspective.
Yeah.
We heard a little bit about your journey and where you were at life during that time.
Right.
But I also think this is a great perspective for the audience because as an entrepreneur, you're at a different space right now on your journey up the mountain to the mountain where you're going.
Yes.
And I think the perspective we can learn from is going to be great for a lot of people because you are at a new platform. And correct me anything I'm saying, but you're at that point in your career and your journey in life where you've had a ton of success. You had what may be perceived as a knockdown moment, or you might have a different view of it, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
And now you are using all those lessons, all those tools, all the things that has made you who you are and successful during life to this next chapter and the fun things that are in front. So I'm really excited for this, and I thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man.
Yeah.
And it's been an amazing ride so far, but it's only going to get better.
Yeah, and for those who are wondering who the spouse was, it was obviously Kat, and you guys remember Callous Wellness and all of that journey. And during our conversation, she had to step into the business when you had to step away for a little while.
Right.
But before we get there, I would love to understand from you, being that you were born in another country but raised here for pretty much your whole life. You were what, just under 2 when you came?
Yeah, 18 months old. My parents first came here from India.
Yeah.
For them, America is the land of opportunity. In the Bible, for the Israelites, the promised land for them was the land of milk and honey. So like America was the land of milk and honey for my parents. And so coming here was all about their children. And it's funny because that perspective to me, I think is not carried forward in the U.S. from generations that maybe grew up here. And once again, it's just probably a bias, but just seeing how much my parents gave up to move here, it sometimes gets me choked up, but I think I can make it through this one. But they sacrificed so much. My dad was very wealthy, well off back home. And so for him to give all that up just for my education, just so that they felt like they were fulfilling culturally a dream that was so heavily woven in their fabric, it's just amazing to see that that's what they chose to do with their life when there was so much availability for all the things that they wanted for themselves back there.
Did they speak English when you guys came?
Yeah, so so English is the first language that they learned. They speak. My mom was a very high intellectual woman. She spoke 6 languages in total. 2 Indian dialects, a Portuguese dialect, German, French, and then English.
Wow.
Yep. My dad speaks 3. I know. We could barely speak English there.
Do you speak more languages?
No. So growing up, I could understand some of the dialects, the Indian dialects. They're called Hindi and Marathi. But understanding them was it.
Yeah.
Speaking them, when my parents were here, that was their kind of code language. They could speak about anything going on to each other.
Sure.
But my brother and I would just catch tidbits here and there, but that was it. So,
which I do understand. My parents moved here. My sister was born in another country. I'm the first American born.
Okay.
from Canada, but they spoke English and French. So I used to have to hear French in the house. I didn't know what the hell they were saying. I knew it was about me, but what?
Exactly. But
it is fascinating how, as you mentioned, that people who immigrate to America, that first generation of Americans, or either born here or came at a very young age,
right,
they have a different perspective on how, right, and what it takes to rebuild yourself coming from another country, which there might be some lessons that you are using from your parents at this point in your life.
Yeah, I would say just the unselfishness that they carried forward for their offspring. Like I said, the amount of probably amenities and luxurious things that they would have had access to should they have stayed. My dad was really treated by royalty there, so his focus area of practice was martial arts. And while that may be something that's not necessarily venerated in the same degree until maybe this decade in MMA and UFC and all that, back then that Eastern discipline of martial arts is very highly revered. And so to be a 5th-degree black belt in 4 different styles of martial arts,
wow,
in karate, savate, which is flat hand striking action, aikido, and judo, and have thousands of students in hundreds of dojos. He was called to be among celebrities and debutantes, if you will, in training police, special forces, traveling all over India, giving various talks and demonstrations. I mean, he had a lot of pull with a lot of law enforcement out there, and the red carpet was rolled out for him everywhere he went. And I got to go on a few of those little trips when I was younger because he did take me back when he had to go back there. So I saw what he gave up to a certain extent at a young age. Did he not
bring that here?
No, he did not.
So what did he do?
He ended up taking a very safe job when he came here. He was an accountant or tax auditor by trade back there, but he had his whole martial arts practice as well. And so he didn't necessarily need to work that tax kind of position, accountant position. So when he came here, he worked for the county of San Diego. And so his whole goal was, him and my mom were to save up enough money to be able to put my brother and I through college, whatever college we wanted to go through. One of the reasons was back in the 80s when they moved here, you couldn't bring your international funds into America the way things can be handled today with electronic banking.
Yep.
Forget about it back then, right? There was no email. There was no computers that could do the things that they could do today. So that was a big challenge for them.
So they gave up their wealth as well.
Yeah, like a lot of their every bit of their wealth is back there still, for that matter. They really pinched pennies, did the coupons, did all that stuff, and so the frugality also passed down through me to a certain extent. But the motivation to see what they gave up for me and that drive really brought forth the directive and the objective to be like, okay, I can't let that go to waste.
Yep.
So that's why I used to drive so hard. Like, I got to be successful to fulfill the sacrifice that they made for me. But there was also a uniqueness of it was me, and not thinking about how I can be more selfless rather than self-serving. So that was another element that shifted over the last couple of years.
Imagine.
Yeah.
But did you practice martial arts as a kid?
When I went back with my dad a few times, went to the dojos, got on the gi, did all those things during visits, but we never, when I say we, I was talking about my brother, we never actually trained here because he didn't have a dojo here in California, in San Diego.
But something led you to your original goal when you went to San Diego State of health and fitness.
100%. When I was 11 years old, my dad bought my brother and I a bench press. And 300 pounds of weights. And so we used to call him Little He-Man. My parents are both 5'6". My brother and I are both 5'11". So some way we got the height gene, and we're very thankful for. But we wanted to be like him, so he got us a weight set. And so I've been training for over 3 decades now, as far as with weights and physical fitness. But that is what sparked the intensity behind learning about fitness and Eastern medicine, Eastern training. My dad's a yogic master. So he's not only a black belt, but he's a yogic master. So he does his yoga at 4:30 in the morning every day. He's 78 now.
Wow.
And so he does that in the morning, and then he trains in the evening time, does his cardio and stuff like that. So he's very healthy at 78 years old.
So that was what drove you towards this
Yes.
passion for health and fitness.
Absolutely.
And wellness.
Yep. That's
which,
carried
I
forward.
mean, you can see, obviously, and we're gonna share your story and how you've taken who you are and those values and, your core values, your premise, your foundation, and applied it. But something changed in college and made you because you kind of we were talking off air,
Yeah.
and, you went from a kinesiology
Yeah.
degree to a
business degree. So I had a focus in kinesiology, but then I decided, look, why am I going to pay the university to teach me things I love to learn on my own? Let me get a business degree. I can be more versatile.
That's interesting the way you just said that. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that. Why am I going to pay the university to teach you something I'm going to learn on my own? You saw university as a platform to teach you things you were not going to learn on your own.
Correct.
Where so many of us use education to follow what we already want to learn and could learn on our own.
Right. And I guess accessibility in today's environment I was in college 25 years ago, so the accessibility we now have to information.
We're the same age now. You were just in college. Just yet.
Yeah. We didn't have that, right? We were just at the infancy of the technology age and the boom. I remember my days of having a pager. Sure. And then a flip phone. So
see-through baby blue.
Yeah, it definitely antiquates us. But nevertheless, got my business degree. And
what was your plan in your head with that degree? Like, what was, if I'd asked you at 21, 22, senior in college, what are you going to do when you grow up?
Here's an interesting story. So when I was 17 years old, I got my personal training certification, started working at SDSU's Recreation Center, and I wanted to get my real estate license also because I was heavily focused on the next move for me because of what my parents had done by this big major move and transition. So I was like, okay, I love these houses. I want to get into selling it, something with real estate. And I told my buddy at the time, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to get my real estate license. I'm going to get my massage therapy license too because I want to know more about the body. And he said, man, you need to stop spinning your wheels and just stay focused on one thing. I wish I'd never listened to him in some way, right? Sure. But that's a trajectory I don't know because if I'd gotten my real estate license, that would have been in 1998. Mm-hmm. I would have had 10 years of taking territory in the real estate space before the crash of 2008.
And I was going to say, for those who don't know, which we do, that was a golden era until obviously everyone is probably aware what happened in 08 and how deregulation led to predatory lending, which led to the decline. But there was a window where real estate was what crypto may be today.
Yes.
The golden era where you can make an absolute fortune.
Right.
I also wish I had resources, money, and what I know now back then.
Right. And so I would say if there's a drive, if there's a burning desire in somebody's heart to go after education of something, pursue it. Don't let somebody else talk you out of it. At the end of the day, where I'm at now came from those decisions and how I've been shaped.
Back then, did you pursue opportunity through the lens of money or passion? Back then.
Yeah. I think I was trying to stay as close to the passion pursuit as possible, but also could I find the passion where there's the biggest amount of money to be made?
Were you money hungry?
100%.
Did you have like financial goals in your brain? Like, I want to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah. It was funny that though in some ways, someone could look at my financial profile through those times and say that I was successful in comparison to, 75, 80, 90% of the people around me, but I was never satisfied. Mm-hmm. And I always wanted more and wanted more and wanted more. And it always still left me unfulfilled in that way. And so the focus, once again, as I said earlier, was more of like I was bringing it back to me. Like, how can I get more? How can I build my empire? How can I build my kingdom?
Which isn't abnormal for a 18 to 25-year-old.
Correct. No.
Right.
But as I learned throughout time in the business space, one of the best quotes that I love is from Zig Ziglar. And he said, if you want to achieve your goals, help others achieve theirs first, or others achieve theirs. See, the first is an automatic for me. I added first in my head for that phrase so that I would always remember, look, I'm trying to help someone else achieve their goals first. And I know it's going to come back around to me from maybe not that person, but somebody else. And even in spite of that I wove into my brain, it was still thinking more about me,
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, and I emotionally agree with you. I would still challenge that a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use the airplane analogy where when the little yellow things fall down from oxygen, they say put yours on first before you help someone else, because if you don't take care of you, you can't really help other people.
Correct.
So if so I agree that you should. I love the quote, and I agree with it 90% of the way.
Yeah.
I do think that there's an area where you have to say, am I in a position to have that impact to help them so that I can get more for myself?
Correct.
Because if you're not, because if you're too selfless and you give away everything and you're, Mother Teresa or, Gandhi, it's like, that's great, but in the absence of notoriety, how do you impact? If I'm broke, how can I help?
Yes.
If I'm sick, how can I help?
Yes.
So I do agree with, I love the direction of that, and I agree with it 90%.
Yeah.
But there is an element of
100%.
make sure that you're good.
Yeah.
So now you can help as more people. And if you have to raise you to help more, you should.
Yeah.
Because Warren Buffett can do a much bigger impact than either of us.
I agree with you. And so that was the piece that I think I just got a little bit too lost in, trying to focus on me and how much I can get without actually allocating the thoughts, even though, like I said, that platitude was in my brain, without allocating thoughts toward, okay, how am I going to help people with the money that I'm making, not just feed my own needs and desires? So,
I mean, listen, I think that's very mature for someone of that age to have that awareness. When I was that age, I hate to say it, I thought very little about how I can give my money to anybody.
oh no, I was the same way you were.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that recently has gotten,
recently, yeah, okay. I was gonna say,
yeah. No,
Jeez,
I wasn't there.
I wasn't. You know, what do they say? Youth is wasted on the young.
Yes,
Wisdom is
yes, it
wasted
is.
on the old.
Oh, man.
If I could go back, I would definitely want myself to be thinking
Right?
the way I think today.
Yes.
Because it's you come from this 0 to 18 life where it is all about you.
Right.
I'm doing these extracurricular activities. I'm trying to get into college. I'm going to college. I'm building my thing. I'm making friends. I have play dates and sports, and mom and dad in a traditional home are helping, or mom or just dad or whoever, right?
Right.
But it's all about you.
Yeah.
We groom children to be selfish.
That's very true.
And then you become this quasi-adult, right? You're 18. If you go to college and you have mom and dad support, you're kind of adulting like adult summer camp,
Yep.
right? Where you're still not on your own. So it's still me. And then all of a
Yes.
sudden one day it's like, whoa, how do I not only think about me?
Correct.
And so
Right.
I think that it's a normal transition. That's why I was going to be blown away. If you had that wisdom and
Yeah.
foresight at 18, I'm like,
No, yeah.
geez.
I think
Talk
my
to my daughter, please.
I think I wouldn't have ended up where I ended up.
Sure.
Had that been the predominant value that I held, really with true intention.
But okay, so you're looking at real estate, and then they gave you that advice: focus on one thing. And so,
Yeah.
what did that do?
So I continued down my personal training career, and then the university said, look, or the rec center actually, which is still a university, faculty said, we're going to move from an employee-based format to an independent contracting format. So what that meant for me as the head personal trainer was I would either have to choose and continue to train all the clients I have, or drop the program as far as running it. So I had to pick between one or the other, because it was a conflict of interest for me to hold interest in both of those.
Sure.
So drop the program, train my clients, drop my clients, train the program.
So what did we choose?
I chose neither. And my brother actually said, look, I'm working at a software development company, and you don't have any software development experience and technical know-how, but you have sales ability. So I'm going to put you in touch with the team here, and once you get the interview, it's up to you what you do. I interviewed with 6 different people. The vice president of sales was my last interview, and he said, why do you want to work here? You have no sales, or you have no software sales experience. I said, well, I heard my brother's #1 in sales. He said, yes, he is. I said, well, I want to kick his ass all over the place and in sales. And he laughed, and he's like, okay, kind of gave me a head nod. A week later, they offered me the job, and there I was. And so the first year I was there, I was learning. Second year I was there, he beat me by $50,000 in sales. I think he sold like 1.65. I sold 1.6 million. And then the third year, he left 10 months in. So even though I took the title for the year, he's like, you can't take that title. I left.
Where were you guys at 10 months in?
I think, we were well above 1.4 million, 5 million.
Who was winning?
I was.
Oh, then you
Yeah.
kicked his ass.
Yeah.
Sorry, brother.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But he's,
Play the tape.
yeah, he's the older brother, so we've had that competition as far as that
He quit
goes.
because you were whooping his ass.
Yeah.
That's what it is. He
Yeah.
saw. He was now looking in front, and you were there. He's like, I gotta get out of here.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool. So I worked there for a bit, transitioned to then credit card processing with him and his business partner, and then from that business, I went into real estate development. So I started a real estate development company called Lions Den Developers. Worked on all types of different projects, from entitlement of vacant land, doing major transformations of homes. So not like 90-day flips, but we're talking about taking it down to the studs, or taking off floors, rearranging floor plans. And I was pretty much the design and build project manager. So I would have the vision and then steward all the guys, basically adult babysitting.
Sure.
In the contracting world, and get to a finished product. So I would have a couple of individuals that I would raise funds from and work on these projects. So I did that.
What drew you to that part of the real estate?
Well, I had the real estate kind of bug when I was 18.
That part, the design.
Yeah, that part came.
That's a whole different side.
Yeah, that part came from a relationship that I was in, where we had a house, and we wanted to redo the kitchen. And we brought a designer on that was new to the area, and she's like, look, I'm going to do this pro bono for you if I can project this, or I can put this project forward as my own in National Kitchen and Bath Association. I think they had some type of tour or competition. So I said, sure. So then we got into the back and forth. She gave me some spatial design, and then she gave me some actual decorative design. And I said, look, the spatial stuff looks good, but the rest of it I'm not a fan of. Came to heads, and I'm like, I think that I'm just going to have to ask you to step aside and let me do my thing, because I have a very creative aspect to myself. And I went through it. The project ended up on the National Kitchen and Bath Tour. She got her recognition. And the contractor that was doing work for me, he's like, look, you're very organized. You're very detailed. You should think about doing this as a business. I didn't give it a second thought until I didn't even think of it as a business venture until he said that.
Yeah.
And so that's when I was like, okay. And then I was in a networking group, so I had people that were realtors and lenders and all that stuff. And so that's how that came to think.
It's fascinating how opportunity presents itself and your skills come out in a way where, because I think you're saying it through your story, but I think the message is clear, right? Entrepreneurship is finding an opportunity that you can deploy your skills and resources to grow it into something and solve either a problem or expand on something that's there and make it better.
Right.
And identifying and figuring out where you are great in those skills, it's not always present. You don't always know what they are until you have those circumstances. You're like,
right,
whoa, I did that. Those around me just validated that that's actually better than what most can do.
Yes.
And now you just turned it into a business. And that's why one of the things I love about opportunity and entrepreneurship, it cuts both ways, which we'll eventually hit on when we get there. But I think it's important because a lot of people aspiring to get into entrepreneurship, especially in these entrepreneurship departments, programs, and schools, like I speak at a lot of them, including San Diego State's, Lavin, they have these courses, and I sit down with one of my mentees or one of the students, and I'm trying to figure out, I want to be an entrepreneur, so I'm trying to figure something out. And they're looking at it not from how can I put me into a business that can make some and add value, but they look at it as where's there an opportunity regardless if I have the desire, passion, skills, or whatever. And sometimes it is like, oh my God, I'm artistic, and now the opportunity shows, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about that, how you found that, because that's not being found in a class.
Right.
That's identifying and doing a self-inventory of who I am, what can I do, and how can I shine. And when you live in your brilliance, that's where success
I like that. Live in your brilliance.
Absolutely. Yeah. The more we do that, we win.
Yes.
Where you see the confusion for people and they struggle is trying to have me be an accountant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an accountant. Even if I want to be, I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't have that. My brain doesn't process like an accountant would.
Right.
So I am fighting against the tide in the current every single day versus using it as ride the current in, right? So that's where I try to push people, especially, entrepreneurs. And I love when I'm talking to someone like yourself who has had success in so many areas, when I hear that story of how do I find my brilliance?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a great example.
It was interesting too, because I found myself on the side of deal analyses of a lot of deals. And while I have the creativity, I truly feel blessed because I also enjoy working behind the desk and working numbers, pro formas, expectations, doing investment summaries and all that stuff. So I love the entire aspect of what real estate has to offer. I originally thought, I want to be an agent. But when you get to the development side, there's so many more technical verticals that you can work in, from non-performing notes to, like I said, vacant land entitlements, or doing the multifamily stuff. And so the variety, what the goal was of mine in that space was to get as much exposure to as many different verticals in that space, and then really decide, okay, where is the niche that I want to focus on?
Yep.
One of the best sayings that I've heard is that niches create riches, right? And I know that's probably a popular saying, but it's true. And that's what I was trying to figure out during that time. And also during that time, I had a relationship diversion, which caused me to run off track in the real estate space, but then was introduced to this opportunity in the cannabis space. And cannabis.
And what year was this?
This was 2017.
So California was already legal?
Yeah, it was already legal. Everything was copacetic on the state level.
Yep.
Federal level, even to this day, still hasn't changed.
Correct. The winds are shifting, but correct.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we? I think 28, 30 states now have legal.
It's up to, I think it might be up to 40.
40
states, 38 was the last number that I was sure of.
Okay.
So that's close to 80% of the states. And so in the cannabis space, I had seen cannabis work as prophylactic for my dog who was going through lymphoma, and we actually used cannabis, combination of CBD and THC, for pain relief because it's a great anti-inflammatory. What most people don't know is that cannabis can actually be it is better than, let's say, an opioid, because an opioid is a pain blocker, so it's a pain signal blocker, but it does not have anti-inflammatory effects. CBD, THC combo is a pain blocker, but it's also an anti-inflammatory, so it reduces it, and its propensity for addiction is practically a fraction in comparison to an opioid. And
Well,
we
it's
know
also
we
a
have
plant.
yes,
It's also natural. I mean, it's from Earth.
yeah,
Now, can chemicals make it stronger or less? Yes.
Yes.
And you could say lots of plants, some kill you, some don't, right? You
Right.
can eat a poisonous berry and die. So not all plants are great because it's natural, but an opioid is made in a laboratory.
correct.
Cannabis is grown from the earth.
Yeah.
I would venture to say, without knowing anything, even if I didn't know what the two things were, I'm going to guess the thing grown from earth is better for my body and long-term effects than the thing that was made in a laboratory.
Yeah, and when it comes to plants and what's grown from the earth, there's a couple of terms. We won't get into the technicality of it, but hormesis is the one that you're referring to in terms of just the little bit of that dose can be both poisonous or toxic, but it can also be beneficial. It just depends. I mean, look, food today in too much has shown to be very toxic to people. Hence, 70% of our population is overweight. So coming back to that environment of cannabis, I knew medicinally it was tremendous. It had tremendous benefits for people, but it's being held politically, or was and still is in a way, being held politically hostage. And there's this back and forth tug between should it be legalized, should it not. And so at that time, the intention was, let's get the license, let's get the research done and find out what phytocannabinoids, these are the beneficial elements from the plant, can really affect people's brains and bodies without having to go into all the big pharmaceutical drugs that are keeping patients for life rather than offering cures. And so in order to do that, there was a lot of funding that needed to be brought into the space. Institutional funding is still very much on the sidelines and looking at what's going to happen with the legality. So at that time, it was like we needed to get a proof of concept. I needed to find out whether or not manufacturing-wise, because I was not on the growing side, I was on the manufacturing side, would provide the product that was good enough to be sold in the market, once I got the licensing.
Provide the distinction for some of our audience between manufacturing and growing side.
Absolutely.
Because some may think that those are the same thing.
Yeah. So cultivation is one vertical of the market where you're actually, growing seeds and you have a grow house and things of that nature. Of course, all those things are legal now in the state and you can get licenses for those. There's an extraction side, which takes dried cannabis flower. It goes through a process of being used through an extraction of gases, either CO2, butane. There's even different processes now, resin processes that are used to extract the oil, which carries these cannabinoids into the next product or next stage of it. You have crude, which comes from the extraction. So just like gasoline, you have gasoline crude, and then you have refineries that do the refinement process. That last piece is called distillation. So cultivation, extraction, and distillation. I was in the distillation vertical.
Okay.
So we would take out the undesirables, the particulates, things that somebody would not want in that oil, and then that would go into vapes, vape cartridges, gummies, other different products that would be sold at that level. So in that vertical, the whole goal was the most potency and the highest quality of potential of oil, and that's called hashish oil, that someone could get. And in that space, we would get potency analyses and find out, okay, these are all the different cannabinoids or elements of this oil that are present in there. And so there's more than just THC and CBD in cannabis. There's CBG, CBN, THCA. So there's so many, and that's just three of them. I think they've discovered over 120, maybe even 150 different cannabinoids at this point in time, and they all act like keys in the body to the locks that are present. We have what's called an endocannabinoid system, endo meaning within. We have CB1 cannabinoid receptors that are 1 and 2, and they work on the peripheral nervous system and central nervous system. So there's so much science in the space here that was not and that still to this day has not been given its fair allocation of research dollars because it's been restricted.
Yep.
And so that was the intention was, okay, how can we get to the point where we have our own scientists and chemists looking at this to maximize its benefits on the medicinal side? It was never for a recreational purpose, but
it could have been.
But it could have been.
Yeah.
It could have been. But the intention, as I said, was when the license came through was to keep it all in the medicinal space. The challenge that I faced was my intentions were on track. My initiative was even right because I did file for licensing, but the second facility that was the license application facility was not able to be used until we had the license. So in our first facility, it was running essentially illegally. And the proof of concept was confirmed, and I could have stopped there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
well, you're an entrepreneur.
And
let me ask you, and these are the tough questions I think all of us go through in different areas. Why did you make the decision, knowing that you had to wait for the license, to not?
Part of it was due to the technicality of waiting or on a expectation that was given that it would be 6 to 8 months before licensing was granted. That ended up taking 2.5 years, and it was never granted until certain legal ramifications were brought against the city to get the people that were filing that had filed for these licenses 2.5 years ago. I never saw the end of that process as far as the facility goes, but that piece was like, okay, well, the transition can be made as soon as the license is granted. Great, stop the facility that's not operating under the way it should be in the license infractional area, and just move everything over to the one that's in the clear.
Yeah.
Because that transition never happened because the license never came. That's what I said. My timing was wrong. Intention right, initiative right, timing wrong. Because I had the option to say, you know what, I think this is the stopping point. Pull back, stop now. Let's just wait. Proof of concept is confirmed. But as you said, part of it was entrepreneur. A lot of
opportunities now
was exactly opportunity and demand.
Yeah.
And the last piece of this was the money.
Yeah.
Right. And being able to get that profit and that revenue and all of that and that attraction. So the lack of self-control to a certain extent was also present in my space during that time.
Mm-hmm.
That combination was very volatile, if you will, and led to a bigger challenge for most people and most families.
And before we share that, what caused the cards to crumble? What brought because if you were acting with the intention you had with the license, why and how did it get to a point where you all of a sudden were in the spotlight in the wrong way?
Yeah, I had a lot of time to reflect on this, and I would say the conclusion I came to is that God intercedes for us when we need Him the most, even though we don't think we need Him. And so my trajectory, if things had gone very successfully, transitioned over, I think I would have become a bigger slave to money, and it would have become my master rather than it become my servant. And so that's where I think I would have fallen into. Obviously, I can't ride that donkey.
Sure.
I always say you can't ride 2 donkeys with one ass. But
there's another saying my father used to tell me. It's a little bit not as you can't kiss every girl is what he used to tell me.
Yeah.
So you got to pick your path and go.
There you go. So I can't ride out what that story would have looked like in that regard, but I do know that at least from the technical side of things, one of our distributors who was bringing us food-grade ethanol, there was also distribution of other things that he was doing. Apparently, the federal agency known as the DEA was tracking that person and found our facility through that observation.
And what made that your facility on the federal level and not at the state level, being that you weren't multi-state? Because it was federally illegal, their jurisdiction allowed them to just come in?
Yeah.
And the state legalization didn't matter?
No. Yeah, federally illegal, so it didn't matter even if actually the judge in my case, which surprise, I was facing criminal charges.
Yeah.
The judge in my case said even if you had your licensing on the state level, I would still have to give you, we'd still have to prosecute you if this case was brought into my courtroom.
But possibly a softer punishment or a plea deal could have been had differently? More
potentially,
in your favor?
Potentially, but potentially, absolutely. Once again, we wouldn't know that. If it was at the state level, our attorneys would have said, look, this is a licensing infraction. slap on the wrist misdemeanor kind of thing instead of it's, felonious prosecution.
Well, I mean, listen, when it became legal in the state of California, I tried to get into the industry. I was part of a group. We were putting money together to try to get a license for what, a MedMen style shop.
Yeah.
We didn't get one.
Okay.
Because there were people who had started like you ahead of the legalization, which this is this is a true tough thing because not everything is legal, illegal. Like you don't have a black and white side, but you know what the lesson was to me? I should have done it earlier.
Yeah.
Those who started before it became known to everybody through crypto is now legal, right? Or whatever is now legal, and ETFs are now legal. Those who invested back when it was more of the Wild West, the gray area, make all the money and success. And so if you are your master is money, and all of us get stuck in that, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm guilty of that all the time. I mean, if I could go, I used to tell myself, man, if I could go back, I would have started this 2 years earlier, even though it wasn't legal yet.
Right.
Because I watched my competitors make a fortune. I mean, there was a time MedMen, I think, was a multi-billion-dollar enterprise.
Yes.
And I'm like, that could have been us.
Yeah, we ran into that perspective when we saw dispensaries during that same period that we were in the manufacturing time frame.
They were everywhere.
They were everywhere, and there were ones that were working on their licensing, and of course, those guys, we didn't know all of them, but we definitely knew the ones that had set up shop, got cease and desist letters, closed down their shop, and opened up down the street and kept running, and that was considered the gray area, the gray market time. And so
I'll tell you a story on that.
Okay.
I'm growing Everbowl.
Yeah.
There was a location, and at that time I had commissary kitchen, so I was looking for warehouse space.
Okay.
And I was trying to get this space, and I had a deal worked out, and all of a sudden I never heard. We had the deal worked out.
Right.
I had the contract. I redlined it. I sent it. Crickets. I finally called. My brother was like, I don't know. They're not responding.
Yeah.
They ended up leasing it to one of these dispensaries because a lot of times they were in warehouse spaces.
Right.
And instead of charging me $4 per square foot, they're charging them $15, and they'll pay it.
Of course.
And it was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can't compete with that.
Right.
They're literally growing money.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes, go on. Absolutely, man.
So
Absolutely.
It was definitely that time. And so you get, so the cat's out of the bag, right? So you get prosecuted.
Yep.
And you're going through this moment. They raid your shop.
Yep.
And what are they saying you're facing even before you?
The interesting thing is I was not there during that time. We had some guys working there. So they came in, they shut the location down. We heard that it was shut down. They did not come and actually address me and the business partners that we had at the time until 6 months later.
Oh, wow. So you thought nothing of it?
No, I knew something of it because they were just looking to get information about who was on the lease for the warehouse location.
Okay.
And then we retained attorneys, and my attorney said, look, we're going to let them know that you will surrender. You will go down there. You will do all the things that they're requiring you to do. There's no need for them to come out like you're a fugitive.
Right. Don't bang my door down and...
Yeah, but 6 months later, get a bang on my door at 6 a.m. Mind you, my wife or Kat she was not my wife at the time. Actually, she was my girlfriend. She had flown out for her job, and so she was up in the air when this happened. Now, Zeus and my other dog, Boss, who was alive at the time, they started barking like crazy, and I'm sleeping. I'm like, shut up, right? I'm trying to sleep. But I also thought it was the roofers working in the complex, because that we had a notification saying that the roofers were going to be working in the complex early in the morning. So we're hearing this loud bang, 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 bang on the door, just me by myself. And I'm like, oh, it's just the roofers. So I really go back to sleep for a minute, and then it keeps happening. And then I look out the window. I'm like, oh, the welcome party is here. There was at least 12 to 16 officers, and they were fully geared up. Like I'm talking about the vests, the cartridges, the actual not blazers, but they're DEA kind of vests, and they had the AKs out, or the ARs, excuse me. They're not Russian. And so it was like they were banging on the door. And so then I texted her before I even went down. I said, hey, I think the welcome party's here. And
'cause you were expecting it at some point. You were expecting...
I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting
just someone to come and say, hey, you had to come down today?
Yeah, I was expecting my attorney to tell me, hey, it's time to go down.
Yeah.
So didn't expect that at all. And then when I finally went down there, and opened the door, they asked me who I was. I said yes, and then they're like, "Yeah, you're under arrest." And so she got the message, and so she got off the plane, got right back on the plane, and flew back down to San Diego. And so her heart was, I'm sure, in her mouth in that regard with everything that was going down. I was incommunicado, not a state, but obviously not able to communicate.
Sure.
And so she had to figure things out. And she was my girlfriend at the time. And the biggest thing is that they said my bail, or they asked for a bail of $250,000.
Okay.
And
is that now for some that sounds like a lot, or for some that may sound not like a lot? Is that a lot considering the circumstance?
Yes, and yes. And they actually...
Bail sometimes is a precursor to what kind of punishment they believe you're facing.
Yeah, and so the counts were 3 counts, 2 on conspiracy, 1 on public endangerment, and they were looking at, once again, the elbow or the force that the federal government wants to put on you is 20 years to life for those 3 charges. That was originally what I was facing.
Wow.
Yeah.
20 years to life.
20 years to life. For something that's legal on the state level. Seems very incongruent, but there's the situation I was dealing at the time.
And it's a scare tactic up front.
Of course.
Regardless of if they're going to actually pursue
Correct.
it. But it's always easier to make somebody have a better conversation with you if they're scared out of their mind.
Yes. And luckily I was not, I knew that, right? And maybe you can chalk it up to watching TV shows about this stuff, but also just knowing that what I was doing authentically wasn't something that was, 1, endangering the public, and 2, it was an injustice in a way, and it has been an injustice for all the people that have had to go spend time in prison for either manufacturing or more than that, the personal consumption. Mm-hmm. Either way, that's a different story. But as far as what Kat had to do, that was just amazing, because she put up her house for me, just being my girlfriend, to get me out, to bail me out. And even the investigator that was working on our behalf was like, I'm sorry, what are you doing? Like, you're not married? There's no ring on your finger? You're crazy. Like, that's not something that I would ever recommend anybody do, never even expect somebody to do. So truly humbled by her. It's not even generosity, it's just compassion and trust in me, and just love. Knowing my character, and of course, love. But to have those type of people in your corner, right? There's I don't think there's anything greater that somebody could have done other than lay down your life in that sense for somebody. So
that's amazing.
She's an amazing woman.
Shout out to Kat.
100%.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So now you're on bail.
Yeah, I'm on bail, and I'm waiting. I'm waiting to find when everything is going to drop. But this is November. I was spent 16 days in the Metropolitan Correctional Center downtown,
waiting for bail.
Waiting to get out. And so,
what year?
This was 2019.
Okay.
And so 2020 hits, year of COVID. Kat and I do what any person or family would do in the circumstances that we were in. We start a business.
I mean, why not?
Why not? All these unknowns. Hey, let's just go start a wellness clinic.
I mean, you are who you are.
Yeah.
And you got to live life.
Yeah.
And does part of you feel like you're not going to have to, is part of you feel like this is going to end in a fine or a probation or a slap, more of a slap on the wrist? Or were you more thinking this was going to be more serious?
No, we definitely believing on the side of that we were going to find a way to, or things were going to change legally, and this was all going to be, tuned out or turned down, if you will. Granted, our case got kicked, I think 9 times, because the courtrooms and all the not legislation, really the mandates and getting people in and out of court and the masks and all that stuff, they were like, no, we want to reduce how many cases we're seeing. So it just kept getting kicked and kicked and kicked. And so it really never got to an actual hearing for the plea that I had to make, and then the sentencing till 2022.
Okay, so about 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And in because I don't want to skip over what you did in 2020, like you said, everybody would do at that time with their girlfriend, is start a new business.
Right.
You also got married in that time.
Yeah, so we got engaged. So after
you gave her a ring right when you got out, I would hope.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you didn't.
Yeah. So January 31st, 2020, I proposed to her and asked her if she would spend the rest of her life with me. It'd be an honor. And so she said yes. And so then the whole getting married during COVID and finding a venue that would not make you wear a mask and all of that stuff was like, that was outrageous. So then we said, okay, why don't we wait?
Yep.
and not put a timeline to it, just enjoy the engagement. Because at that point in time for me, if I was to ask her to marry me, she's already my wife when she says yes. I'm not a bachelor till we actually go through a ceremony. In my head.
Of course.
You're married in your head before you're married in a physical standpoint as far as the ceremony goes. So we waited for the right time to make those plans, and the most, interesting thing out of left field came. She had decided to get off of her antidepressant, anti-anxiety medications in June, July of 2020. She was on those for a very long time. Something during COVID clicked, and I forget if she even talked about this on your story
we did
or on our cast, but she made that decision when everybody was getting on them. Mm-hmm. This brave, resilient soul says, you know what, it's time for me to bail on this stuff because I don't need it. She spent 1.5 years getting her feet, getting her bearings. And that's why I say she's one of the most resilient and gritty people I've ever met, because she does not stop. She is relentless in everything that she does, especially figuring things out. So I could never lie to her because she would figure me out. She'd be relentless that happens. So she's like the best truth serum any man could ever have. But on that same front, she tried so many different modalities and methods to get her, we'd call it her physical, her physiology, and her spiritual side connected. And it was only because she was invited to go to Awaken Church in San Marcos location by our good friend JD that she ended up going one day, and she met the pastor's wife during that first visit, and the pastor's wife was like, "Oh my gosh, you're not beautiful. Are you single?" And she's like, "Oh no, my fiance's just not here." And so she said, "Okay, well, when are you guys getting married?" And she said, "Well, I don't know. With all this COVID stuff, we really don't have a date." She said, "Well, we're in the process of buying this home, and if we get it, you guys should get married in our backyard."
That's cool.
That's cool. Kat came home to me and was like telling me this, and I'm like, "Babe, that's a sign from God that we're supposed to get married in this house." And she said, "This is a pastor's house. Like, how big could this backyard be?" Right? Because traditionally we don't think that that's going to be something amazing and so forth. Anyways, a couple months later, they say in church they get the house. She's like, "You should probably go talk to the pastor and see what's the deal." So I talked to him, and he's like, "Hey, let me put you back in touch with my wife. She handles this stuff." We get introduced to the kind of a wedding event coordinator. They show us the house. So as we're pulling up and the gates open to this estate, we're like, wow, okay, this is not going to be a small backyard, right? So we get there, everything kind of falls into place. We get married in 10 weeks. So from the time we get the green light, and we planned it in 10 weeks, we get married on April 1st, 2022. The day before we get married is the day I heard you speak at Pathfinders for Awaken, for Awaken Church.
I didn't know that
so
was
the Pathfinders conference,
yeah.
And so that was when you talked about wind stacking, 1%, get 1% better every day. Just a very powerful message. And so, I'll never forget that conference, one, because it was the day before our wedding.
Wow.
And two, because of the amazing presentation you did. So, 100%.
Thank you, but congratulations to that experience.
Yes.
So you got married on April 2nd.
April Fool's Day.
Is when you got married.
Yes.
April Fool's Day, 2022.
Yeah, there's a whole story behind all that. I don't think we have time to go into that per se.
But I want to go back a little bit, because the business you started while facing the biggest uncertainty, I guess.
Facing incarceration.
Yeah, I mean, your freedom is on the line, but yet you still had was part of it to sink your mind and effort into something as I hate to use the word distraction, because that's not fair to the innovation and creativity of the business itself.
Right.
But sometimes being able to sink yourself into a challenge and something bigger takes your mind off what.
Yeah, I don't think I ever found myself in that headspace of that was the direction I was going, like occupying it. Maybe it was never an intentional side. Maybe it just unintentionally worked its way out like that. But for me, it was once again the love of business. It was a love of the health and wellness space. And here I am finding myself back in health and wellness after being in credit card processing, real estate development, cannabis, right? Even though cannabis has the elements of how it ties into our health and wellness, this was truly in that space of now helping people one-on-one find the protocol, find the treatment, find the program that can really transform their life and give them a better quality of life. So that was, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun building something from new. Again, entrepreneurs, we like to put something in the ground and grow it. Now, I got sent to prison for that. Now, I wasn't a grower, as I mentioned. So nonetheless, that did allow me to focus on those things, but at the same time, finding my way back to church, which once again was an ironic story, and finding my way back to where God is the center of my life. Kat didn't grow up in faith. And so she really asked me to go back to church and look at these scriptures that were on the screen and help translate for those, because I grew up Catholic. And so then I stopped going to Catholic church when I was 18 years old. But when I said to myself, do I really want to go? I was like, no, I don't. But this is for my wife to be. And how can I not be there to support her when she supported me? So I've said this to many people, that it's the ironies and God's sense of humor has never been more evident in my life than over these last few years, because my wife being the one that gets me back to church when I've been gone for so long, and just all the things that happened to me during my time of incarceration, just the profound revelations that I've gotten, it's made this experience so much richer and so much more profound, so much more exciting, and as I tell her all the time, and so much more adventurous, right?
And I think how long did you spend in prison?
I was originally sentenced to 2.5 years. In the feds, they go by months, so it was 30 months. And the programming, what it changed in 2018 when Trump was in there, he released the first step back. And so it allowed you to get credits for every month that you served. So for every month that you served, you'd get 15 days off. So for every 2 months you served, you get a month off your sentence.
Every 2 months you're in prison, you get 1 month off.
Yeah. Okay. And so in essence, I ended up serving a total of 18 months under federal custody. And 15 and a half of those months I was in the facility, and the last 2.5 I was on home confinement.
Okay. And was that you didn't go to trial?
I pled out.
You pled out and then negotiated that.
Yeah, I didn't know what was coming at the time of sentencing. I did not know that. No.
They didn't say if you plead guilty, you get?
No. There were what called sentencing guidelines.
Yeah.
That could have been 5 years to 10 years per count. Granted, I pled guilty to only one count, so we got those other two kicked.
Maximum one,
but it's still up to the judge's discretion, even if the prosecution says, hey, we're okay with the defendant's attorney saying that we agree with the defendant's attorney that he should get maybe 24 months, 20 months. The judge could say, nope, you're still going to get 60.
Which is always the case. But did your attorney and the prosecutor come to
a
point where they were going to give an agreement or recommendation? Did you try?
I believe they did, but there was still nothing this essentially concluded upon as far as it goes.
So any part of you want to fight this thing?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But the facts of the case were it's illegal at the federal level, and that's where the jury has to hang their hat.
You knew you were guilty, but
and that's why we wouldn't work. It wouldn't have worked in trial.
Sure.
So the best thing that I was able to do, the second best thing, was to get our attorneys to work with the prosecutorial team and say, look, if the government changes its position on cannabis down the road, then I would get to withdraw my plea. And in typical plea agreements, you do not get that option.
Right.
Once you plead, that's it, you're done. So with the potential rescheduling of cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, there's a possibility that I would get to repeal my plea. I've still done the worst of it in terms of going through that experience.
Off the record, and you won't have to. Well, you will. I mean, I don't know that you'd ever not tell your story because it's you.
Yeah.
But in theory, you wouldn't have to check a box on some form.
Correct. Exactly. Changes. No, 100%. And I'm very.
Which shouldn't define you anyway.
It doesn't, and I have no shame about it. I'm completely open about my admission of like I said, right intention, wrong timing, and I've asked for forgiveness for the people that are the closest to me that I really needed to seek forgiveness from, because I took away the time from them that they would have had with me, and also my ability to serve them better and the pain that I put them through. And it's a piece of the process I would have never picked for myself, and if I had that option in advance. But in retrospect, it was probably my saving grace for my trajectory down the road, and for whatever God wanted to work in me, He was pruning me during that time to get me ready for the responsibility that He has for me in the future.
I hear a lot of times people share their darkest moments, right? Their fall. And I've had my own version of it, right? And through that analysis and discussion, I've figured out that it's not the fall that hurts you. It's what you hit on the bottom. And so if we change the bottom from concrete to a trampoline, then the fall doesn't hurt you. It's actually what propels you potentially to a new level.
Absolutely.
And so what I love about where you are in a headspace today, obviously we haven't spent a lot of time together, but just the time we spent pre-show and now, and hearing your story and hearing your values, and even the 5 core values that you mentioned to me, which we're going to get into in a second, you seem to have quickly figured out how, while you were falling, that if you changed the floor to a trampoline, you're going to end up higher anyway. And so it didn't break you. It didn't change and take you down a spiral of negativity that turns into drugs, alcohol, depression, abuse, whatever takes people down that path.
Yep.
Right? And they justify it based on some event.
Yeah.
And they blame the fall, but it's not the fall, it's the crash, right? And so I want to commend you on that, because I don't know how I would handle that situation, and I doubt I would have been able to do it what appears to be as eloquently as you did. And I mentioned to you another friend of mine, Damon West, who has another incredible experience and story, and even just how you've used that time wisely, right? A lot of times we use downtime in the wrong way, and just based on what I've been heard from you and talked, like, you figured out more definitively who you are, and where you're going now, right? And the message and lessons you can impose and share with those who you love and care about, but also others, right? And if you don't mind sharing those 5 core values, because I have 5 of my success for me, and I love when people share theirs,
Awesome.
And you inspire me when you said it. I want to ask you about one of them.
Specifically. And I'll touch really quickly on what you said about the trampoline versus the floor. I think the biggest part of it, and it's very similar to the message that your guy that you mentioned about being the coffee bean stated. For me, when I was in there, I was like, you know what? I can either be affected by these circumstances, or I can affect my circumstances. And that's really what my driving force was in there. But I truly say that what I found was how I coped in there. My coping mechanism became my Bible, became my desire for my relationship with Jesus. So that aspect of it was truly what transformed me and gave me an atmospheric shift in my life and my way the way I thought about things. And so when we have a desire for a relationship with somebody that's just starting, if I wanted to know you more, I'd probably have to spend time with you more. I'd have to find out about your likes, your dislikes. What have you gone through? How do you handle those situations? We're uncovering a little bit of that about me and you right now. And then over time, I might find that we have some commonalities, and that there's so much richness in the way you think, the way you apply your thoughts, what you do for people. And that's what I found myself in terms of a desire about Jesus Christ. And I was like, you know what? I want to find out what he felt in the flesh fasting for 40 days. And so the night before I went into prison, I started fasting. And I did not know if I'd make it 40 days. I'd never fasted before for more than 24 hours. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, you know what, if I have all this time and I don't know what I'm going to do with it, I'm going to fast. And that seems like highly illogical, because as I look back at it, I'm like, I'm going to prison. Typically, you want to have some type of size,
I was just thinking
muscle,
in my head.
Right? And I did not.
I was going the other way.
I did not give that a thought. I can honestly say in reflection, I did not give that a thought. It was more of, what can I pull out of this experience in terms of growing closer to him? And so then when I read the Bible while I was inside, I was specifically focusing on the red words in the Bible. So the red words in the Bible are what Jesus spoke. So in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that's what I was reading so much. And so I read those a lot of times, and I read the New Testament a lot of times. And I went back to the Old Testament after, but I did not. It seems to be such a longer book that I did not get to as much. Overall, I don't know, man. I probably read through it 3 or 4 times as far as in totality, but the New Testament maybe a dozen or more. What I found is that became my coping mechanism. So I saw guys in there spending so much hours in the TV rooms, spending so many hours maybe with arts and crafts. I spent hours reading. Besides the Bible, I've read probably between 10 to 12 books a month. Okay. And so I in the last year, in the last couple of years, I've read in the time that I was there, roughly 150 plus books, combination of all different types. And then, of course, the Bible of itself. So my coping mechanism was, I think, one of the biggest ways that I developed so fast in that aspect of self-awareness, recognition of my faults, coming to that level of honesty to myself, where I'm not lying to myself about what's wrong with me, being able to put away my pride, grow in my humility, and then grow in my maturity. And that also came full circle back to my 5 core values that Kat and I share, which is, the first one is faith, second one is family, the third one is fitness, the fourth one is congruence, and the fifth one is service. So it's faith in God and faith in yourself that he's going to pour into you if your heart is open and ready to receive it. It's family, which could be, yes, your blood family, but sometimes people have dysfunctional blood families.
Sure.
So then it's either your church family or anybody else that's in this world, in this space, is really, if you're a brother in Christ, then anybody that God created is really your brother or your sister. So how do you treat those people that are not of the household of faith? Really, you're supposed to give them the same love, care, concern that you would somebody who is a believer. Mm-hmm. Very hard to do. Fitness is of mind, body, and spirit. That's just very straightforward. Congruence is when your thoughts, your actions, and your words are all in alignment. It's very hard. I think you can probably discern somebody's energy when those are off. And then service is when you're in overflow because you have those other four things lined up so well that all you think about is how you can serve others. And that's what's funny is that's where I'm at now, is I'm in this mode of service first and serve myself later. Granted, I still believe that God is providing me with the mask first in any situation. But he's given me such a great capacity to think about how many other people can I get the mask on because he's already given me that mask. That's where I'm at today.
I mean, I love it. And where I wanted to ask you is what I didn't hear was one more F, financial, or W, wealth.
Okay, I like that. Okay, we can definitely get into that.
Which, listen, I'm not going to say that wealth is a bad thing or a good thing. To me, it's a great thing because it's a tool. And I believe in always having options and having the right tool for my situation.
Yes.
And wealth, financial, allows you to have opportunities and take advantage of them.
Right.
People, if you choose to.
Yep.
Buy every Ferrari if it's all about you. Whatever you choose to do with that wealth.
Correct.
But I didn't hear that in there. And is that because it is no longer as important as it was when we went back to your beginning story? Or is it that you believe that by following these 5, that'll take care of itself, so it's no longer on the forefront of your mind?
Yes. And so it does come back to a biblical verse that's very popular, but it's in the book of Matthew. It's chapter 6, verse 31 to 33. And Jesus is telling the people, he's saying, look, do not worry about what you eat. Do not worry about what you'll drink. Do not worry about what you wear. Your heavenly Father knows all that you need, and he will provide it for you. Just seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. So when you seek first his kingdom, you're not seeking your own. Okay. You're being of service. You're not self-serving. The financial part of it, that what you need to eat, what you need to wear, what you need to drink, is going to be provided for him. That's the perspective that shifted. Sure. It's once again, and he continues to say, you cannot serve two masters, right? You cannot serve because you're going to end up loving one and hating the other. So you cannot serve God and mammon, which is the technical term for money, which is once again what came through my revelation of time spending with Jesus's words and helping me understand what he was saying, is that you don't need to have a focus on money to get money.
Sure.
The more you chase it, the more it's likely going to run away from you.
That's right.
So the more you look to serve other people, the more you're going to attract it. And so in that aspect of things, what I've seen is just in the recent incidents or recent events in our life is that my focus has been on, okay, how can I, fifth principle or fifth value, how can I look at my mode of service in everything that I'm doing on a business scale? And Jeff Hoffman, who I think you also know,
great guy,
one of his best messages, which is going to stick with me, just like your 1% better every day and win stacking has, is he said, your success can be someone else's miracle. Very much in line with what Christ was saying, right? So it's just in different language construct and different architectural sentence-wise, but still very much the same message. So in our church, we have a title for someone who gives $100,000 to the church. Okay, that's really why someone would give some money to a church. Many people would be like, "You guys are crazy," but that's where people are being spiritually led into a life, hopefully, where they find peace. It may be unique to us believers, but here's the premise of it. If I'm able to give 10% of my income, which totals up to $100,000, that would mean 10% of that's making $100,000 is $1 million. So once again, I'm seeking to serve, but that means I'm making that much more. So when I heard that term, my competitive aspect in me said, I want to be that giver, because they were actually giving out a sword with a centurion. They're like, if you donate $50,000 and you get a helmet, I was like, man, I want that too. So, but that position of thinking in that nature was where it comes back to the value of service. Service is part of the overflow. So I know if I'm right in my faith, if I'm right in my family, if I'm right in my fitness, I'm right in my congruence, then my service is the overflow. And all the money that I need is all going to be taken care of. In what way will I make it? I don't know those things.
Sure.
But I believe that God has given me those talents to where I can put them to work, and it will double. It will 10x, 30x, 60x, 100x. But my intention is, okay, then how can I create miracles for other people with that bounty? Because as you said, the higher your platform, the more people you can see and the more people you can serve.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Hoffman has done very well financially, and he travels the world doing incredible miracles for the disenfranchised and the struggling all over the globe.
Yeah, 100%.
And he couldn't do that if he did not have the capital,
Correct.
the money, the wealth to accomplish that and touch that many lives.
Yeah.
And that's why, again, everyone has their formulas, their values. And I say this on stages all the time. Don't chase money, attract it. Don't chase relationships, attract it. Don't chase success, attract it. Create an environment that welcomes it in by not focusing on the dollar. But when I evaluate the utility of and the use of my time, energy, and focus, I want to prioritize those that will, for me, mine, create an abundance of wealth.
Right.
Because now I can choose to give it to the church.
Yeah.
Or to give it to this.
Right.
And the same token, I think that, to your point, so that's why I thought it was interesting, because very rarely do I hear successful entrepreneurs, especially ones who have made decisions for money over the course of their life. And as I asked you, how money motivated were you young and very?
Yes.
As you've now outlaid those principles, those values of you didn't have that one there. And I see how you got there, because it's a byproduct of these results. I don't have to say 4 if 2 + 2, I know it equals 4.
Right.
So I do 2 + 2, I'm going to get 4.
Yes.
And I love that. I just wanted to ask you, because as we're hearing that, how do you think about it today?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
absolutely.
You get to that next crossroad and you're saying, okay, where am I going to devote my energy now? How am I going to apply myself today? Does the amount of opportunity financially play in? And if yes, where does it fit in those 5? And that's kind of how was trying to figure that out, because it's important. Right?
Yeah. One of the recent things that happened that impressed me greatly is the UFC fighter John Jones won a big title fight or defense fight or whatever the fight was. I didn't get to see it, but his message after shocked me. And when Joe Rogan interviewed him, and he's like, "Hey, what do you want to say about this fight?" He's like, "First, let me just say, I give all the praise and glory to Jesus Christ." And I mean, it blew me away, because this guy's been, in the worst situations people can imagine if they just look up his history, from drugs and car accidents and drinking and all the stuff that he could be. And here he is some years later giving all this credit to Jesus and his transformation of what he's done in his life. And as you said, his platform is so great. There's so many people that look at John Jones as one of the, if not the best fighter in the UFC. But here he is breaking out the first part of his message talking about this. So I definitely see that a platform is needed. But it's not a platform that I'm ever seeking for myself anymore.
Sure.
And so I really enjoy seeing those things happen, because it changes the tide and changes the trajectory of so many people's life when they see someone of success not talking about themselves and the me, and saying, you know what, I give credit to this man whose legacy has continued 2,000 years later, and that's why I'm sitting in this chair talking about him. Because now I feel like I have a relationship and a better understanding about him, which has changed me so internally at a deep level.
Well, I love John Jones, and I'll give you a fun personal John Jones story.
Okay.
It was 2018 or 19.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine knew him very well and said, hey, send him some Everbowl. I want to show him this product.
Yeah.
So I sent him some Everbowl, and he posted it on his story in 2019 and started following the brand. And never met him in person.
Yeah.
But here I am, this brand trying to grow. I'm trying to get some more attention on my business, and we're growing. And this world champion UFC fighter who had he lived at the time in New Mexico.
Okay.
I don't know if he still does today in Albuquerque. So we sent the bowls there, and he received them, and he gave us a little video. Thank you so much. They were delicious. He said what he liked about them. And then 3-4 days, we're all over his story, and it just gave us a whole bunch of attention, to your point, that he has personally, I've experienced him deflect and share the eyes on him to pass to something else. Now, I'm not comparing Everbowl and Jesus Christ, and I'm saying, but what he could do with that, his platform, elevated my business.
Absolutely.
When he had no financial interest to do said a thing.
Yeah.
He was not an investor. I wasn't pitching him. He wasn't opening stores. We weren't franchising.
Right.
He did that for us he liked the product. He liked our mutual friend a lot, and he felt he could help somebody.
Yeah.
And did it out of the goodness of his heart. And
absolutely.
forever. From that moment on, John Jones became one of my favorite UFC fighters.
Absolutely, man.
So
that's cool.
I share that because I think it was, again, one of those little things where people don't realize the impact they can have.
Yes.
Right? The impact that there's somebody who is in my audience, someone in your audience, someone in everyone's audience, that they have the power to influence and impact somebody. And so if you shout out your friends' businesses, if you put highlights on what they're working on, their passions, if it's not a business, it's a passion project, it's a charity, it's a book, whatever it is, you don't realize that it's not always about the money. That's why I say wealth doesn't just mean the cash, right? Yeah. Because Joe Rogan has wealth in money, but he has wealth in a platform. Yeah. And he puts me and Everbull on that show, and we get a ton of upside. He doesn't have to give me a dime out of his money pocket. Yeah. And so I would challenge you a little bit to realize that when you think about your impact long term, and we talked about it, neither of us really love social media. Right. I got pushed on it, and it's a different experience. As a vanity tool, I don't like it at all.
Correct, 100%.
As a platform to grow what I'm trying to do with my life and bring awareness and attention to the things that I think are good for humanity in the world, which my businesses, yes, they're for profit. I am not sitting here telling you I'm curing disease or curing poverty or water, but I have a health and wellness type food product that I think makes more people better who eat it over the fast and the fried. And I have a construction company that makes businesses spend less money so they can hopefully be more successful, and we can decrease the failure rate of brands that are building brick and mortar businesses. Yes, I want to make a ton of money. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm altruistic and I'm just saint, because I'm not. I'm in it to make a ton of money and help a lot of people at the same time. There are so many opportunities for us to do that, and we all have to take that self-examination, that even though we're not chasing wealth, money, audience, exposure, influence. I mean, I've spoken at your church, I don't know, 12 times in one way or another, between catering and Pathfinders and the actual church itself. And they have those pillars. And one of those pillars that they talked about was influence. Mm-hmm. You know, one of those Pathfinder principles. I mean, I don't know it all. I've never gone through any of the programs. So I'm speaking just from limited exposure from when I'm there, and obviously I know a lot of the congregants and some of the people, the pastors and the people who are leading it, and influence is one of those things. And so obviously, as you think through this next journey, because I know you're writing a book, and I think that message needs to be heard. I would challenge you a little bit to not rule out and fight through potentially the resistance of, because you have a unique story. You can be like, oh my gosh, like here I am complaining that I went bankrupt, or my business failed, or my marriage failed, or you went to prison. I mean, and look, everyone's car accident, whatever version of life it is, hurts. And no one's belittling or saying, but I think a common scariest fear, if you give me the choice, bankruptcy or prison, I'm choosing bankruptcy. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, knowing what I know now,
I might choose prison. Maybe prison over divorce, because I love my wife, and that's a different story. But again, you went through that, and look at where you are today, and look how confident, strong, happy, and composed you are with this next chapter of life, and how you're seizing and attacking it. And so I would encourage you to make sure you finish that book. That I know you've written most of it, and I know you already have a title.
Yeah, and I took a sigh there, because you're not the first person that says I should probably get out on that platform. I will say one thing to tie back to what you said earlier about the financial aspect of things. It actually happened the day that I heard you speak. So I left the Hilton, La Jolla, and I was driving back.
That was the breakfast.
Was it the breakfast?
I think so.
Okay, maybe it was the breakfast. Whatever day.
Maybe it was a lunch.
Okay. No, it was a breakfast. Okay. Did you speak at the breakfast?
I had a few of them.
Yeah, you spoke. Yeah, I know you did. So, okay. So I think that was, I'm sure that was the one, because it was the day before the wedding. I know this. So as I'm driving back, this was the second time I felt like I heard the voice of God speaking to me. And the interesting thing about it, he said, look, you were not ready for the next level of service. Once you have built up your spiritual wealth and you give it out, that's when you're going to get your material wealth, okay? That was the words that I felt like I heard that weren't part of my own origination of my own thought. As that happened, I'm looking in the side view of my vehicle mirror, and I'm driving on the second or the lane next to the fast lane, and this vehicle is pulling up, and it's this this vehicle that's exactly the type of configuration that I had put on my phone screen and my computer screen at home. And I say this because historically I've acquired every vehicle that I've put on my phone screen or my computer screen. And so it pulls up to me, and it's almost cartoonish. Like it pulls up, and it's like doing one of those things where it just looks over and then it goes away, right? And I'm like, whoa, what just happened here? Was that confirmation that like I'm not going to get that until I do more work internally and actually build my spiritual gifts up, my spiritual wealth up? Of course, me being still more egotistical at that time because I hadn't had this hiatus, this sabbatical yet. Sure. I'm thinking, I got plenty of that to give out, so I'm definitely going to get to this material wealth pretty quickly. Only after I go into my incarceration and realize how spiritually empty I really was, that bottom became my climb to the mountain and really having my Moses time with God, where it's just me and him, my Jesus time, where it's just me and him, and that's where I started to develop. And granted, I'm still, 100%, still growing, still need a lot to learn, and probably still building the spiritual wealth that I need to share at some point in time. But yes, it would be a channel like an Instagram or whatever the platform is to share with others. Like, you can go through difficult times, still persevere. It's going to build your character. It's going to build your hope. It can change your focus. It's not your bottom, but it is your springboard. Mm-hmm. It just depends on what lens you decide to put on and carry yourself through it. So I wanted to tie that back in and then come back to the question moving forward. The book is called Fasting for Freedom. Mm-hmm. And I went in thinking, because there is a verse in the Bible, multiple, but there is a verse in the Bible where it says that fasting can move mountains. And I paraphrase. So I was like, well, if I fast 40 days, this is part of it. If I fast 40 days, not only am I going to learn more about how Christ felt, but maybe I'll get out too, right? And I'm thinking, because that's the mountain that's in front of me, is this prison sentence, this environment that I'm going into. Little did I know, the mountain that needed to be moved was me. I needed to be moved. My pride needed to be moved. All of the things that I held important of the past needed to be moved out of the way so I could really get the spiritual fulfillment and enlightenment that would make me ready for the next level in my life. And so I fasted for 40 days straight. I did make it all the way through. I did have one, I can share this. I did have one event where I passed out. But there's more details to that. I'll save that for the book. Yeah. But then I ended up fasting for 20 more additional days, not concurrently, through the rest of last year. And then I fasted for 40 days this year. Actually, probably more, but consistently once a week, every day for 40 weeks. And so not only do I have physical goals, but I have spiritual goals. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways that I set them is just like everyone has maybe their yearly goals. That's one of the things that I do now, because while our physical condition is a reflection of our work ethic, our consistency, and our discipline, our spiritual condition is also a reflection of our work ethic, our consistency, and our discipline. You can say that about mental and emotional too. So that's, the book is going to come out probably next year. I need to allocate all of my time better between all the things that are happening. But, our transition to a new state, mm-hmm. a new opportunity, mm-hmm. Will potentially lead me into a space where I have that time frame to work with and bandwidth to work with. So it's exciting.
And for the sake of this, we're filming this at the very end of 24. So when you say next year, I'm going to hold you to this year. 25.
Oh, yeah, 25. Yes. Okay, yes. Fair enough. Yes.
This will come out in 25.
Yes.
So I want to make sure people go, 26. No.
Yeah.
I want to read it.
Yeah.
I need to hear that part of the story about the passing out. I do.
I have a lot of stories.
I'm saying, I can only imagine how deep you can go in this book based on your experience, because this is a movie. That's the book. Books are always more rich than the movie, right?
Yeah.
And we're only able to share snippets, and the real lessons, the real value will come out of your words when you get to pour them how you want to pour them into that journey. And I think it'd be a fun experience for everybody, whether you think you need the lessons, because we all learn in different ways, and we all get in school, you study for the test, and then you take it, right?
Yeah.
So you learn the information, you take the test. But in life, you take the test, and then you get the learnings,
yes.
right? So
you pay that tuition up front.
That's just the difference, and it happens on a dime. And that's why a lot of children to adults struggle, right? Yeah. Because in childhood, it's like, this is how you play soccer, you go play a game. This is how you do your math, you go take a test.
Right.
Now you're an adult, take the test. Now we're going to teach you the lesson.
Yeah.
And if you didn't do well, it could be a bankruptcy, a broken marriage, prison, death, or it could be minuscule stuff, a little fender bender, right? Because you didn't look over your shoulder, whatever it is. And so I think that it's very important that we all be a student of knowledge and thirst of learning and learn from others. And I think that there's so much about your story that resonates. So, I mean, I could talk to you for hours. This has been
man, it's been amazing.
Deep. Yeah, it's been really good.
If I could share just one perspective that I think is pretty. It was pretty. I wouldn't say dramatic is not the right word. I think there's even a more powerful word for this. But it's one story that I think is great to share about my time in prison. I met a gentleman. His street name was Amp, and it was short for Amplified. And I asked him, why they call you Amp? And he said, because I like to amplify everything I do, man. And so it was funny because that was his voice. He looked like Mike Tyson. He even sounded like Mike Tyson. And this man had been given a life sentence. And so it was very interesting that I met him because he wasn't supposed to be in the space that I was in. And we had gotten to talking after I met him, and he said, listen, you don't understand what it's like to get letters and not numbers. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, come here. And he went to his locker and he pulled out his piece of paper and he said, look. And it said his name, and then it says release date, deceased.
Oh, shit.
My reaction, because he said, you got numbers. What does your paperwork say, right? What's your release date? A numerical time. This says deceased. That slapped me. That slapped me like your mama would slap you, right? Yeah. And I was like, and I said, so well, how did you get here? So he told me the story about it. He told me about his faith. He told me he lost his faith 2 years in because he was on this life sentence, and then how he came back to Christ and how he started believing and praying for wisdom, and he got downloads, and he did the things that he felt like he was told to do, and here he was in a minimum security prison, one door away from the street, versus being in the prison that he was, which was for life. Mm-hmm. What that did was it contributed to the shift in my perspective and my thinking about how so many people are physically free, but yet they give themselves their own conviction of letters over numbers. There's going to be a time where your season changes, where you're going to break through the prison, but you have to see it. You have to envision it. And if you don't, guess what? You're committing yourself to being deceased and never leaving the place that you're in. So when he said that to me, it had a major shift, like a major contribution to my shift in my thinking. And the irony, tying back to this piece, was inside prison, I was physically restrained. But mentally and emotionally and spiritually, I was free. Mm-hmm. I had all the time in the world and so few responsibilities to work on me, to work on my relationship with God. Out in the world, we have all the responsibilities and so little time, and people are physically free, but they're mentally, emotionally, and spiritually locked up. And I was like, wow, and people don't necessarily see that because they're just in the fishbowl.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's extremely profound. And I mean, you're so right. I think everyone can take a moment and internalize those words and be like, oh shit, I mean, it's real.
And that's why I say now I carry this message forward, and Kat's probably gotten a little tired and tone deaf of this, but it's after that moment and with a combination of a couple others, I was like, you know what? Life is just an amazing adventure. Mm-hmm. It's just what we choose to do with it and how we live it that can make it that way. But life is truly an amazing adventure when you partner with Jesus, and that's what the way I have this attitude and this disposition today, man.
Well, I'm glad I got to know this version of you because it's inspiring. I don't know the you before. Yeah. I'm sure it was great too, because if Kat fell in love with you, and I know Kat, then you must have been an incredible man with a lot of these things. But
I deceived her pretty well back then. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but I will say the fact that I get inspired by people who know where they're going, have clarity in their purpose, have a strategy to accomplish it, and aren't stuck in that fishbowl. Yeah. That's what inspires me. And so a conversation like this and being around you, like I see all those things. Like no matter what choices you make, you're making them. You're driving your car. Yeah. That is what I want for everybody and myself. And I think that you took a terrible moment and you turned it into a springboard for this version. So I mean, I'm I can't wait to continue to watch and experience your journey from the side as friends. But get that book out, because I think everyone should learn from it. And if you choose to use any of the platforms to expose yourself more, I think you have messages that can be received, whether it's spiritual based, experiential based, or how you see the world. But not a lot of people come out of prison with that perspective. They come out as a victim and say, well, now that ruined my life, and now I can't, and now I can't. And they see all the walls, right? They see all the thorns on the rose bush. And I think you're looking at a rose that just happens to have some thorns on it. And don't care. So, man, thank you. But before we end, I got rapid fire.
Okay, shoot them.
So I'm going to ad-lib a couple because I have curiosity.
Okay.
But, so quick answer. You're going to stare into camera one.
Okay.
So I guess we'll start with, what's one piece of advice you'd give anyone who is starting their health journey?
Oh, okay. Rapid fire, man. Stay consistent. Be disciplined. As I said earlier, our bodies are a reflection of our work ethic, consistency, and discipline. So find someone that can be your coach. All the professional athletes have had one, and they don't stop getting coached until they retire. So if you don't plan on retiring from your health, get a coach.
What was the first thing you ate after your 40-day fast, and your first thing you ate when you came out of prison?
Ooh, 40-day fast. I did communion. I had a saltine cracker and grape juice, and that was the first thing I ate. And then I had some chicken, and I got some eggs. Long story on how that happened. You can't necessarily get fresh eggs in prison, but hey. And then what was the second one?
What was the first thing you ate when you came out of prison?
Oh, sushi. Actually, no, I ate my parents' make some amazing Indian food. I had that first, and then sushi was next on the list.
If you had to sum up what you learned in prison in one sentence, what would it be? What was the most profound thing you learned being in prison?
I said it earlier, man. Life is an adventure, an amazing adventure with God, for sure.
And then finally, because we didn't get to talk about Zeus.
Oh, yes.
You know, Zeus he might be my favorite in your household. He's an adorable creature who comes everywhere, and I get so excited when I see him.
Yep.
What's one surprising lesson you've learned from him?
Ooh, man, the unconditional love that he and just his spirit that gave Kat so much comfort made me grow so much more, I guess, in love or just in care for him, and making sure that he was always taking care of as best as possible now that I'm back, because he took such great care of Kat when I was gone.
I mean, you heard it there, man. Thank you for going through rapid fire.
Absolutely.
Love the answers. And thank you again for pouring yourself into this audience and sharing this part of your journey. A lot, like I said, pre-show, a lot of people wait until they have that. They're at the very, very top of their mountain or close to it to want to expose to the world, and your ability to and confidence to come on and be vulnerable and share some of your darkest moments without fear or judgment. And like you said, you're not embarrassed. You're confident, and you are. And that's so rewarding, and your successes dictate why you were successful, and then one mistake led you there, and now why you're going to continue. And so I just want to, man, seriously, thank you, because not a lot of people I feel coming out of prison would be, let me jump on a show and talk about it.
Well, thank you, man. Your words are very kind and gracious, and this has truly been an honor to have this invitation and be on your platform. So as I said, if there's any way I can serve you, by all means.
I have one ask.
Okay.
I want a signed copy of the book. I want to pay for it, but I want a signed copy of the book.
Amen. We'll definitely
2025.
2025. You got it, brother.
That's my ask.
I don't shake hands on deals that I don't plan on keeping.
All right. This is on camera.
It's on camera. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, everyone. First, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. And if you guys haven't heard about my new book, Relationship Bank Account, click the link in the show notes or search the title on Amazon. This book is packed with all my secrets to success in both relationships and life. Make sure to pick up a copy, and if the book helps you on your journey, let us know by leaving a review. I appreciate all of you and can't wait to see you on the next one.